Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I am one of your neighbors here on the island. My name is Callie Johnson, and it is my pleasure to welcome you as the chair of the Sanibel Plan Update Committee to our next community workshop. And without further ado, let's get down to business, Bill.
Good afternoon, Bill Waddell with Kimley Horn.
And I'm Jim Hickey with Calvin Giordano Associates. Hello, everyone. Just one housekeeping. This is being videotaped, so this front end, if you all, I know it's not easy, but if we can all keep the noise down because the microphones are really quiet. So we just want to make sure we can capture all of the presentation for folks that are going to be watching this online. So thank you and welcome. This is the second public meeting that we're having. I know this is bugging me, so I think do this. That's much better, isn't it? Better. Anyway, I was going to say a tall joke, but I'm not going to. So anyway, so we're here for the second meeting. One of the things we're talking about, we're going to have some discussions coming up. We just want to make sure that we're civil in the discussions. You may not agree with your neighbor, but let's get all the information out. This is kind of an understanding of where we are. You might have differing opinions on something, but let's talk through it and make sure that we're making sure that we're hearing from everybody, right? We want to hear from everybody today. That's the whole idea of this meeting. And this is just something, all of those items. So we're doing the welcome now. Hopefully you'll hear not very much from Bill and I in the next couple of minutes, and then it will be passed on to you. Then we're going to do the roundtable discussions, and then we'll do a closing. And I'll talk a little bit about how those will work. Something I just want to keep you all aware of is this is the economic assumptions of the plan. Again, making sure that we know as we go forward and as we look at this plan, what are kind of the pieces that we're integrating into the plan to make sure that we're planning something that is for you, the Sanibel plan, making sure that it meets the requirements of what you, the residents and business owners, want to see. Our first meeting, were folks at the first meeting. It was pretty well attended. We had 175 people. It was a great turnout. We also had a number of folks filling out surveys. We do have an online survey still, and that's available till April 12th. No, April 12th, my apologies, June 12th. The meeting we had was back in February. And just going through some of the things, this is the vision statement. We have the board next to Bill on the right. And this is the vision statement. Of course, everyone's familiar with the vision statement for the city. And we just wanted to ask, are these the pillars that you still see? And then you can clearly see from the dots that sanctuary is very important. So as we have these discussions, as we move forward with the plan, we want to make sure that we're always thinking that, right? That idea of sanctuary is really important as we integrate. So we want to make sure when we're talking about land use, when we're talking about transportation, we always go back to that and make sure that that's the key factor that we have kind of in our heads as we talk through it. Emerging themes and issues. This was just kind of to show you we had a great turnout with things. And then transportation, we'll talk a little bit about that more. But really, we wanted to know kind of where you leave from and where you go to start to understand a little bit about the traffic patterns that we have in your community. Right now, I think we have about 850. This is the numbers a little bit lower, but we have over 800 responses from the survey. You can see most concerns are overdevelopment and environmental impacts. Those kind of jump to 1 and 2 there. Household size, you can see those. Most people are 2-family households. This is something we also wanted to understand, right? Unfortunately, we're still kind of thinking about, the events that have happened the past few years, but kind of what have we kind of learned coming out of that? What are the changes that folks see? And you can see the sense of community and community character, the way that you all got together and amazingly got this community back to where it is today. It's a feat that I think involved everybody in the room, as well as city and others, to kind of bring Sanibel back, right? The other thing that Bill and I talked about this morning is the bottom there. You see the business community. So the business community is really having some issues, not but there's a longer timeline for them to kind of come back to where they were pre hurricanes. This is just talking about kind of what you all see more of: local restaurants, healthcare. At the bottom line, it would be retail chains, short-term rentals, and the other two, mixed-use development and food trucks. Yeah. And then the top 9 themes. And the two that rise again is conservation, restoration, preservation, and what's sustainably supported. So again, really thinking about that sanctuary, your conservation areas, how do all those interact with the land uses and everything that you have in the community? And this is just a word board. We ask people the top three things, and of course, there you see nature, you see sanctuary. All of those things are popping back up, right? So we're almost done with me talking and Bill talking. So the meeting format moving forward. So you're all in the groups, which is great. Thank you. We have facilitators. We have staff at each table. We have facilitators and we have scribes. They're here to listen and help facilitate discussion and write down. Hopefully the scribes have good penmanship. Please write clearly. Thank you very much. And what we will do is a series of a 20-minute discussion. We'll go through the three topics. And then what I would like you to do kind of before we start, elect spokesperson or spokespersons if more than one person wants to do that. And then at the end of that 20 minutes, we just ask one of you to get up and then just kind of explain what you talked about at the table, just to kind of summarize some of the issues. I think it's good for all of us to have that communication here, but hearing it globally, maybe someone else went off on a different discussion, or maybe they came up with a really good idea. We want to make sure that everyone hears that and understands that moving forward.
And Jim, building on that, we really would like the tables to focus on neighbor to neighbor, business owner to resident, communicating with each other, sharing ideas, building on thoughts, disagreeing, which is okay. But we really want that to be the focus of your table. And you certainly are welcome to ask questions. We've got some roamers here that can answer those questions, but like it to be more of a conversation amongst residents and business owners at the tables rather than directing questions to our staff. You're allowed to, again, but that's what the focus is, for y'all to talk to each other.
Right. And the other thing too is we're thinking this is the Sanibel plan. This is a long-term comprehensive plan. It's kind of a little bit higher than the implementation or code or something like that. So it's kind of thinking long-term, what would you like to see? What changes you might want to see in the community? And what's also working, right? What's working now, don't touch that. We don't want that to change. We want to hear that as well. That's it. So these are the three discussion topics: resiliency, land use, and transportation. I will mention that if you have folks that aren't here or can't make the meeting later today, we're going to have a series of virtual meetings to discuss these three topics. So we'll let folks know, but if folks couldn't make it, that'd be good to let them know that it's available and ready. So the first topic would be resiliency. The second would be land use. And the third, again, would be transportation. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead. Why don't you
Yep.
go ahead and go through the general the questions under each topic.
Right. Okay, so the first is resiliency. Resiliency is the ability to recover or adjust easily to adversity or change. The questions that you have, now each table has a map, right? And there's three maps there. The first map is resiliency. The questions that we have on the screen are also on the actual handouts, and they're also on the maps themselves. And that just gives you kind of an idea as you're looking. Us planners like to be visual, but you want to see kind of what areas potentially could be impacted from what issues that we're talking, right? So, and these are the questions that we would like you to think about. What does resiliency mean to you? Particular issues or shortcomings. Resiliency doesn't necessarily have to be resilient for hurricanes, resiliency to flood, resiliency to a number of things. It could be resiliency to COVID happening again, those types of things that make the community understand and be prepared for things rather than being reactive to something once it happens, right? If we have a plan and we know where it's going, it's much easier to understand that and move forward. So we'll probably give you a couple of minutes, like 1 minute to kind of decide who the spokesperson is. And then I'll have my timekeepers in the back. We're going to time the 20 minutes, and then we'll kind of give you a 5-minute warning so you can kind of summarize the notes. And then Bill and I will probably go around and I'm old school. I call it the Phil Donahue, and Mike and you guys can talk. So,
and if you'd like, you can wait till after the 20-minute conversation to elect who the spokesperson is. If you'd like to do that, that's
right.
Fine. We just need to know when we're ready to present who your spokesperson is going to
And
be.
one other topic, there should be Post-it notes on the table as well. Sometimes we're talking about something that may not be on topic, but we want to capture that. So if it's something, I call it the parking lot, if something that we need to talk about later, just write it down so that we at least get the information, because we want to get as much information as we can from discussions. Okay, so we'll give it about 1 minute and then we'll start the show. Thank you. Oh, you didn't have one? Oh. Well, let's start at these tables. Okay. And again, my apologies. We're still trying to collect the video. So if the folks not at the table, the other tables, if you could just be quiet whispering so that we can get the important information we have at each table. Who is spokesperson? Ah, yay. Mary, you can stand up and we can talk through the items. Now, remember, Phil Donahue, I have to hold the microphone. You say,
Okay,
You want to just
so I'll be Vanna White then. Okay, so in our resilience, I think the main thing that we really talked about was the water on the island, the water that's being left after a storm. And so how can we change that? You know, because we have to think, we have to think short term, we have to talk medium term and long term, and how we're going to survive the climate changing, you know, and the erosion and the flooding. And we have to look at the whole picture and the whole island. There's been tremendous water and flooding, and how do we mitigate that? So I think we really were talking about that. Who's responsible for that? It was just brought up at the very end that 70% of our island is dedicated sanctuary lands, and who's responsible for that 70% would be like SCCF, and then that would be also the Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge. And how can we work with the other 30% of the island, which is where people live and maintain their homes? People are finding that their roads are being more flooded. There's not enough of drainage on the island, they feel. And so we really need to look at our drainage system on the island. And we also looked at some strategic energy planning. And also in our resilience, we talked a little bit about how we're going to get back on the island. And what was the last one we talked about? Let's see. Oh, yeah, how we can get back on the island sooner, not only physically, but how we can get our services back up, such as our sewer, which we suffered the last time, and the electricity.
okay, so post-storm and thinking about the future and not being, again, being proactive and not reactive. Thank you very much.
back here. Bob, are you presenting? Bennett's here. Bennett, come over here.
All right. So we kind of tried to go somewhat in the order of the questions here. So we did start with this question of what does resilience mean? So there's sort of I think what it's traditionally thought of in terms of how do we harden infrastructure? How do we, make our built environment more, protected against future storms and whatnot. But we also talked about the fact that, particularly in the context of stronger storms, sea level rise, that there's, in addition to the adaptation side of what is required to be more resilient, there's a mitigation piece, a sort of a prevention, a preparing for the future by being a model community about how we don't contribute to the causes of climate change. So how can we do that? And some of the projects that kind of came up around that related to that topic. We also talked about the fact that, a lot of what has already been done on Sanibel through the Sanibel plan, through kind of the focus on sanctuary and keeping density lower, not overbuilding the built environment, preserving our conservation lands, that all of those things, having our mangrove forests, et cetera, have been an important part of our resiliency. That if we had not protected our island in that way, if we had kind of, let the Disney World version of Sanibel happen, we would have had so much more extensive damage and devastation in the community. So making sure that we continue with those commitments. So adaptation, mitigation, nature-based solutions. So in addition to protecting, and not just our conservation lands, but also thinking about our private lands and how our own properties are part of our sanctuary island and the role that they play in sort of the resilience. I think in your group you mentioned that the 70% of the island is in conservation. That land is really serving us in terms of receiving floodwaters, helping to sort of distract that from private properties as well. We talked about some very specific projects. So for example, there's still a number of elevated homes, ground level homes in the community. Wouldn't it be great if as a community we could come together and really create a structure, a support to help those who haven't been able to do that yet, to elevate homes, get out of harm's way. We talked about some of the electrical infrastructure, how critical our power system is to our ability to be resilient in any other number of ways, whether it's emergency response or city operations or, housing and, protection for residents, our water, our wastewater. So looking at how can we be innovative, particularly with so much change that's happening in our energy technology, to make sure that we're incorporating energy backup systems, incorporating solar and battery, for example, to support resilience hubs, city operations. The whole issue also came up for us around the water and wastewater. I think many people recall that we couldn't come back to the island after Milton because until the wastewater system was powered and charged. Could we use some of these technologies to support getting people back on the island quicker? South Seas came up, and sort of the almost perverse use of resiliency to justify the overdevelopment there, and that while I think there's a recognition that economic resilience is a really critical part of our planning, that we can't let that be kind of a smokescreen for expanded economic activity that actually hurts the broader community resilience. Yeah, I've talked a lot. We had a very robust conversation. There were a lot of other things we hit on, but thank you.
That's great.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. We have this table. Hello,
Hi.
Kathleen. You can sit, but I have to hold the mic.
Oh. Thank you. Okay. This table, we talked about things that could be fixed even if there is no, even without a hurricane. And that would be maintaining our swales, landscaping them. It all will help if there's a hurricane, but that's what we seem to want and find essential no matter what. And the same regular rainfall causes a problem, flooding in certain areas. The city might want to start there, pay attention to that. Then I hear suggestions you hear daily, I think. Underground electric lines, elevate roadways, just a little bit, just enough. And also asking for greater accountability on how the government spends our money. They, somehow to make it, to clarify that things are being done and then see them done, and the amount that it costs from the county, which sometimes seems very far away from here, but it's not. That county money also to be clearly aware of what's being done for us on the island and anyone who may want to come here. A simple thing that seemed to be very important was potable water. Drinking water, not just after a hurricane, but every day, to pay more attention to letting us know that our water is drinkable.
Safe to drink.
Yeah.
Any-
And also, actually, better than safe was kind of the impression I got here.
Okay. Anything else?
That is, you say, what do you
I think we
see?
got everything.
Okay.
I think we got everything. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, table.
Are you the presenter? Bob, you've been volunteered?
I think I've been volunteered.
It's okay. Here, just hit the top. We're running a little long on time. Great stuff. So maybe top 5 or 6 items.
Okay. So resiliency to us meant both being ready for after a storm, so being proactive, and the city having an action plan, but also minimizing destruction, things you can do to minimize destruction before a storm. So being prepared in addition to having a plan for after. And we thought that it would benefit all of us if the city could actually have an action plan. So, for example, after Ian, when everybody was over at Crown Plaza, it seemed a little chaotic. You didn't know what you had to do next, and seemed like at times it was a competition to sort of get yourself in line, first on the LCEC list, things like that. So if the city had like a checklist for what you need to do after a major hurricane, that would help. Better communication with the city, with people, online, as well as one of us really thought that the Facebook Live meetings were terrific and informative. And having an open line of communication with the city and an easy way, maybe easier than not everyone has Facebook, so maybe an easier way to communicate with the city and to listen to those type of meetings, and someone to summarize what happens at each one, so that you don't have to watch a whole 2-hour meeting every day, like happened after Ian.
3 or 4 more of these.
Okay. We were concerned that some of the areas that seem to recently have problems with runoff and with flooding, that pre-Ian never had those problems. And the killing of the cabbage palms was brought up on Sandcap Road as one example, and maybe should there have been something planted there that absorbs water better to make us even more resilient than it seemed like the cabbage palms were. And it was in general sort of a question, why is it so much worse now than it was pre-Ian? And I know there are reasons that have been given before, like impermeability of the ground and things like that, but what can we do to try to make that better? There were concerns about the weirs, flood runoff. Can we increase the number of pumping stations? We were happy that there have been many projects that elevated infrastructure and would like to see that continue. There's electric power concerns even to this day of just constant shutoffs that seem to happen, 2 or 3 times a week. Let's see. Yeah, that's about it, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob.
So at our table, we echoed a lot of what we've heard, but when we talked about resiliency, one thing that we really focused on was psychological resiliency. And the upside to that is that we are a smaller, tighter community after Ian. The downside is that all of the people who just psychologically, I've had too much, I just can't take it anymore, and after Helene and Milton, and left and had an economic impact as a result of that, home values and businesses. The challenge, though, another challenge of that is folks who are now using economic impact to justify changes. Some may not be changes that would be in keeping with our values. So we just lift that up as a concern. With regards to infrastructure, there was an interesting conversation about road system, about the possibility of elevating our roads, but then having robust weir system underneath so that wildlife can go underneath the roads, cut down wildlife strikes, and also when storm surges come, that the storm surge can go under the road and then go back out under the road. We talked some also about the weir system, which I know some of you did, and with rising sea level, the necessity of keeping them able to manage them low enough so that before a storm comes, they can actually do their work. And then we also talked about sunny day flooding and the challenge of that and how we can deal with that and possibly elevating lift stations and utilities. And that's a lot of what we talked about.
Thank you very much. We got every table. Thank you.
Yes.
I think we might modify the next
Next two
item.
topics.
Yeah, probably to, I want to say 12 minutes.
I think 12 minutes each, and then whoever presents back, it can be someone different or the
Yes.
same. Maybe
And-
pick your. We're capturing everything, and we'll summarize it. So don't worry. If it's on the
So-
list, we'll capture it. But please pick your top 4 or 5 items. So we'd love to get you out. Close to on time.
Okay. And the topics are there. We'll just walk through them. We're really thinking of residential, non-residential land uses. How do we balance that with the resiliency discussions we had, right? Are we going to have activities for all ages on the island? So kind of think about it more globally as you go through the discussions. So I will be quiet. I just wanted to introduce, I forgot to introduce in the beginning, Erin Dede, who's here, who is our resiliency / everything. She's an attorney, is well known throughout the state, so she'll be walking around. So if you have specific questions, she's here to help answer as well. Okay, if folks can finish up, we're going to start at this table with your comments. If you can, please summarize your topics, but please be as brief as possible so we have enough time for our final topic.
So as we talked about non-residential land use, we talked about excuse me, table. As we talked about non-residential land use, we talked about how we are missing mixed use areas, especially in the civic core, that might help with affordable housing, walkability, help with businesses. At the same time, we know that we also need to be attentive to density and not increase density in certain areas. Other issues that came up included our use of potable water for irrigation. We don't know that there's a solution to that, but we lifted that up. We talked about various specific things. There's some interest in a public space like a band shell to have community concerts, and it is permitted. We just need somebody to do it, so that's pretty cool. And just how to develop businesses and land in a way that respects our land and our sanctuary island.
Thank you very much.
You're up.
Okay, so we kind of focused on some of more of the professional things, such as medical, young child care, and supportive systems, and trying to find where we could place those. So we really also jumped into our workforce housing and how we could help the businesses work with workforce housing, which we complimented Nicole here. Thank you for all you've done with that. And let's see, difficulty to rent rooms. There was a conversation where it would be nice maybe to help the workers where homeowners or had an extra room in their home that maybe that they could offer that home to somebody on the island that is working. And I thought that was kind of an interesting one. And what do we want our business corridor to look like as we drive down Periwinkle? That was huge, and what we could bring in. We did barely touch on the golf course, the miniature golf with the restaurant, and the concern might be there that if one restaurant puts in entertainment, how is that going to affect all the other restaurants, and will they also want to put in some entertainment? So, and we do not have a 55 plus resource or space for our 55-year older.
Thank you.
Land use, hardscaping regulations need clarification and public outreach. Hardscaping was a major thing that will be discussed next. The villages concept along the Periwinkle, which is, I'm not sure I quite get this, but like things are up and Cars are down. Is that right? So something like that.
Potentially, right.
Two roads like behind, provided it doesn't take out nature preserve, and then do the center more as a walkway and for bicycles, and so that it's more of a central community type thing, and instead of the bad traffic that's going down. If they could either go down one side or the other, they had two options on the outside instead of down the center fighting each other to get into the different stores and shops and stuff, and just make it more connected.
Really, transportation is kind of like we're seeping into the next,
Which is our next topic. So there we go.
and a variety of housing. It could be an enhancement for the island, income and age and so on.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Over here at our table, we had some talk about land use. We like their churches and groceries, and we would like to see Bailey's come back where it used to be, but we think we're pretty good with that. There are we like to maintain the natural areas, but there could be additional like hiking trails or natural attractions in addition to the beaches, and maybe some way to connect them so you have something more to do than just the beaches. Workforce housing came up. That's important, and there was some discussion that maybe the current 3% level of affordable housing is not enough and it should be higher, and we may need more workforce housing on the island. And also it might need to be more spread out on the island and not just concentrated in a certain area. There was discussion about having things for young families to do besides go to the beach, different activities, things like a dog park or even the mini golf was something we discussed, as that could be an attraction for younger families that might be helpful on the island. Or hiking trails was another thing was suggested that could be happening. We talked about the centralized town center and how that could incorporate nature, but there could be some redevelopment there to build on that. And there were also some concerns about spending. We were looking for things that we could do that wouldn't always require so much money to redevelop, but things that could be sensibly done. Like there was discussion about you could put the dog park next to the community park that we have, and that wouldn't cost all that much. So that's basically what we covered.
Okay. Lisa? Yeah.
We focused on an understanding of exactly what is overdevelopment. We didn't feel necessarily that we were facing a significant threat of overdevelopment currently. We felt that it was important to focus on filling in where we have space currently, empty lots, places that have already been approved, redeveloping those as a start. It was discussed small businesses may have obstacles when bouncing back, approval process, things that were maybe fast-tracked after the hurricane through procedures that were implemented. Maybe those need to be reenacted to speed backfill of places that need to be developed. We would like to see more groceries, restaurants, medical infrastructures that support the whole community. Family activities were important. Longer business hours, educational activities, I guess a focus on activities for all ages. We again reiterated redevelopment of existing businesses that were maybe here before the storms. And for housing, we think a variety of options for people, focus on family homes, mix of options, different bedroom makeups. Thank you.
Do-si-do. Thank you very much. Okay, if we can switch quickly to the transportation discussions. This one's probably going to be 10 minutes. We'll go as quickly as possible. We know we're supposed to keep you till 3:30. So if folks need to head out, just please provide the information. Before you start the transportation discussion, just one item. 4:30? 4:30. My brain is an hour behind. 4:30. 4 o'clock. We're until 4. Okay. All right. So we have time. Never mind. Okay. So this discussion, I just want to make sure when we're talking about this, we want to be higher level, right? Because right now you have a transportation master plan that's underway, and there's a public meeting. I think we'll get the date for you. I'll announce it before we leave so that you can attend that. That's going to be more project based. That's looking at the 40-year plan, the roundabout and other items that could be potential improvements, right? But what I want to keep this discussion higher level, alternate forms of transportation, flying cars, not that far, but we want to think high level of the best way to move people around the island and not necessarily in a single vehicle, right? So just kind of put your heads together, see if we can come up with some ideas or some suggestions moving forward. And that includes getting on and off the island as well, right? So.
Thank you. For transportation, our focus was on biking trails. We also had a nice discussion about trolley options, maybe a trolley that originated over at the old outlet mall and then brought people over and brought them back and ran continuously. I guess there's one in St. Armand's Beach, and ways to reduce the number of actual personal vehicles that are on the road. We liked that. We wanted that to possibly also include a workforce transportation focus, condensing the number of trucks and other workers who are coming on so that could potentially alleviate traffic issues. We talked about bike lanes and a variety of bike lanes, incorporating them into the roadways or not. And I think our table felt that we liked the bike paths as they are right now. We think they're robust, and we just would like to encourage people to use them. There was expressed concern about the e-bikes, but concern just, I guess, about biking and cars in general during the busy times of the year. We discussed also the golf cart pullover area on Sandcap, which we all think is a fabulous idea as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Matt, over here. Come here.
So we hit a lot of the similar points. We talked up the idea of making Sanibel kind of an environment that you don't need a car in, and leaning into that and making that part of the marketing of the island. So similar to some other places where once you show up, you can taxi to Sanibel from the airport, and then having enough transportation options that you don't feel limited by not having a rental car with you on the island. We thought that would be a really great goal for the transportation solutions on the island moving forward. That would involve some sort of circulator to get around the island, to get to the different amenities and natural land uses that we talked about in the previous discussion, having a bus shuttle, having more incentivization for electric vehicles as we think about mitigating our climate impacts into the future. That would be beneficial. Having a multimodal approach to the shared use path where we acknowledge that we have pedestrians and bikes and e-bikes and electric skateboards and all of these different transportation options that are all now crammed onto one shared use path that was not originally designed with these fast motorized vehicles involved. So we don't necessarily have a solution for that, but something that acknowledges the tension when you have everything from a pedestrian to an electric bike, a bike, and a golf cart and a car all sharing 30 feet of space on one roadway. So we need some way to incorporate that into our planning, general improvements around that with golf cart pull-offs and some of the other things we talked about. We talked about a ferry dock doubling as a barge landing zone so that if we are, heaven forbid, in a situation in the future where we don't have the causeway, we don't have to scramble because we already have a solution for how we're going to get vehicles onto the island, how we're going to get heavy machinery onto the island. And by allowing that barge landing to be a ferry dock in the off time, then we're able to still put it to use and increase our transportation options because now we're getting people on and off the island and even around the island, depending on where that ferry could land. Variable pricing on the tollway and some some other monetary incentivizations to keep people off the roads when we don't want more people coming on the roads, but then allow them to come when we do want them, prioritizing buses, not just through education, but actually prioritizing buses on the road. So allowing them to skip the traffic somehow, which would give people the incentive to use the bus, because if that bus is sitting in traffic next to you, no one's going to get on the bus when they could just take their car. Consistent traffic management. If really Periwinkle's the only way off the island, then make it the only way off the island at those certain times. Don't give people back ways to cheat. Or if they're getting people on different routes away from Periwinkle is beneficial to the traffic system, figure out a way to incorporate that into the planning and the education around the system. And then just consistently a worry that we've been hearing is that we can't make any major changes to transportation because that'll allow more people to come and overtax our beaches. And instead of treating that as a situation that we can't overcome, incorporate that into our transportation so that we have these abilities to move people onto the island, but then also move them away to the beaches and move them to our businesses and our restaurants and all the other great natural resources and hiking trails and parks that we have, so that when they come for the beach, they're not stuck at the beach and overtaxing those resources. So that was an all-encompassing vision of the future of Sanibel transportation.
Excellent.
Thanks, Matt.
Very good
Wow,
input.
applause.
Okay. Are we ready? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, we're ready.
Most has, I will just be quick because we kind of are talking all about the same needs. Ideas, tolls, no tolls for just possibilities. No tolls for those who work on the island but live off island. Another possibility, this is maybe call this an impossibility, but parallel roadways to Periwinkle would be, another way to get here. Public transportation needed. Then shuttles, freebies, like have been used elsewhere. Island taxi, water taxi, potential connections to the main. Water taxi would be connecting to the mainland. Safety concerns. With e-bikes, which is obviously a deep concern. Wider shared, the shared use paths to rethink them. Research and incorporate best practices. In other words, other places are dealing with these issues, these transportation issues too. And it's not just islands, although we're special. But enhance pedestrian bike crossing to improve safety of, the intersections where cyclists, and not even intersections, wherever cyclists might meet cars, to be a little, to not make it so scary for us all.
Okay. Thank you. Chris?
Ready?
Yes. Thank you. So ditto on everything everybody said. So I'll tell you something that we came up with rather than repeat everything that's been said. We took our map and we looked at the land that is not developed, and we drew an additional bike path from coming onto the causeway, using the Pond Apple Trail, coming behind Beachview Estates, moving down on the left side of Gumbo Limbo and going all the way down to Tarpon Bay Road. So add an additional pathway system through the land and make it not paved, make it more shell. So it would probably take some of the bikers and hikers and walkers off of the main drags of the pathways that we have now. So that was, but we left them the drawing, so that's good. So they can look at that. And then the other big thing was a wave system. Someone brought it up from another island, a trolley that actually takes people continuously all day long from like 7 in the morning till like maybe even 9 o'clock at night, that continues to circulate the island all day. And what I found very interesting and a takeaway was it was all done by volunteers. And as we know, Sanibel is a big volunteer community, so maybe that is something that can certainly happen. And just let me say, we said that. This is not an leased island, so we don't want to raise tolls and parking, etc. We want people to come and enjoy what we have here on the island, and give people things to do. Oh, the movie theater. Everybody was saying how much we miss the movie theater on the island. So I think the rest has been repeated.
Thank you.
So one thing that we talked about that you probably did too was the South Seas elephant in the room and the impact of having both the construction and then 1,000 workers every day coming across our island, and the fact that Sanibel is bearing the pain while they just get to be at the end of the road and have all their people get there. And so we talked some about options in addition to what we've heard, and some of this echoes this. One of the options that we heard was adding a lane for e-bikes and road bikes. So it wouldn't be the shared use path, that'd be alongside the road, kind of like what I think y'all mentioned earlier. And in our dream world, we have a bridge or a ferry going from Pine Island to Captiva.
Thank you very much. Was this the last table?
I think so.
The
I
last
think we got
table
them all.
again. My apologies.
So, Jim, a brief wrap?
Sure. We'll do a brief wrap. Just talk a little bit about next steps. One of the things I did talk about earlier that I do want to talk about is there is current legislation that the Florida legislature passed. It's called Senate Bill 180, and it has a lot of restrictions. You can't be more restrictive or burdensome when we make changes to either your comprehensive plan or your land development code. So one of the things as we move forward, as we go through and we come up with wonderful ideas, we may need to think about what we adopt first. And this expires in October of 27. So when we look at when we're going to adopt, probably sometime in May, we may do a double adoption where you adopt the most of the main parts of the plan, and then things that aren't going to get flagged by the state, or even what the state really does is say, oops, too bad, start again, right? So we don't want that to happen with the good stuff that we're putting in. So it may be an approach that we have to move forward and working through. Just in summary, I think it's great. Great information from everybody, and it's nice to see as you listen to tables around the room, there's some consensus there in each of the topics we had, right? Kind of the thoughts that we're thinking, and that's really important as we start to look at really what we try to look at when we look at the plan. We want to make sure that we're getting that information from you, so we start to look at the plan and make changes to it, that we're doing changes that are based on what you all want and not because Jim thinks it's a great idea, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking at all of the information that we compile together. Just some summaries. We're going to have another public meeting in August. That date isn't exactly set. We'll have that set pretty soon. I did mention, but it's probably good to talk about, we're going to have 3 virtual meetings, one for each of these topics over the summer. So we can kind of get the information out. Also, there's people that aren't here on the island right now, so we want to make sure that we hear from everybody as well. And just to get some more input from folks that aren't able to attend this one day where we had the meetings moving forward. October, we would have another meeting, and that's kind of when we synthesize everything together before we start the formal process. We come back to you all and say, hey, this is what we're planning. This is what we heard from you. This is what we're putting in the plan, and have one more kind of discussion with everybody to make sure we're going in the right direction, right? And then it will go to potential planning commission in January, and then you would have 2 readings of the ordinance. It requires 2 ordinance readings for the changes to the plan. So you'd have the first reading in February. It goes up to the state, and probably adoption in May of 27. So I think that summarizes all the information. I don't know, Bill, if you have anything else
that's
to add.
it. Thank you all very much for hanging around an extra 18 minutes. But give yourself a round of applause. Great feedback. And we'll see you again this fall. Anything else, Paula? Oh, Paula wants the mic.
So 2 quick things. Thank you all for participating. If you all are specifically interested in providing feedback on the transportation master plan, we're going to be having another public workshop right here on June 25th from 6 to 8 in the evening. So if you're specifically interested in providing feedback on some of those transportation master plan projects, they're going to be doing a presentation on June 25th. And the other thing that I think Jim was going to mention, but I'll mention it because I have the microphone. There are some boards in the back. If there was something that you didn't get to talk about that you wanted to provide that feedback, we do have boards in the back. You can write it on a sticky note, put it up, and we will collect that information. And again, thank you all for coming and participating.